Hey everybody, WindDrakeHex here doing a set review from the limited perspective for Armies of Myth on Hex TCG MMO. It's important to note that this is a limited set review, so there are better minds than my own doing awesome thought and theory crafting about constructed. Uh, Something I don't have a ton of experience with. I pretty much draft all day, every day. So my opinions are heavily influenced by my thoughts on draft. So sealed, limited type format. So also this is a little late in the game. The set's going to be set 3 is going to be out in 4 days. So I had some time to kind of play a little bit during test server with some of these cards. Also, hear more reviews and opinions on certain cards. So this is fairly more educated, but obviously a lot of this stuff isn't going to flesh out um, till weeks in the actual with the set actually being released. It's kind of this is like preliminary, get the juices flowing, get some opinions. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, and you argue. Regardless of your stance, it helps the process of analyzing cards and coming up with stances on things. And this is kind of how we all flesh out what's good and not good. So the purpose of a pre-release set review is to really just kind of start that process and get a dialogue going about these cards, so we all have a good enough starting place when we actually play to make really good decisions and analysis and things like that. So again, this is from the limited perspective, and let's go. Ashwood Blademaster is a 3-cost 2/1 troop elf rogue. Elf's very important to note. Probably going to be a strong archetype if you can get it. And he has Swift Strike. So just kind of looking at the base power and toughness to cost ratio, doesn't quite do it for me. But you add in Swift Strike, and that's actually pretty fair. That's pretty typical when you see Swift Strike costing an extra resource under whatever power level it has on its base stats. So I really have no problem with that card. It can deal with a lot of your opponent's 3-drops because it has a Swift Strike clause. So he's going to be irrelevant turn 3. You're not necessarily taking a tempo hit. You could stay aggressive, maybe even attack on turn 4. But oftentimes he's going to be sitting back and won't be able to get through because of his 2 powers, unless you have a trick or something. But he does have the just pay 3. No exhausting, no sacrificing. Just play 3, no one-shot. Just pay 3, and elves you control get +1 attack. That is pretty huge. Now, this is obviously your elf archetype enabler, right? These are the kind of cards that make you decide whether or not going into elves is worth it. I think, even if you have 7 or 8 elves, you don't have like a full 17. Not sure that's really ever possible in draft. He's going to be quite good. And here's why. Even if you only have 1 elf on the board, this is like a great resource sink. So he gets the bonus, and he has Swift Strike. So that's kind of good enough reason right then and there. But if you have other elves, you're making them bigger, and then you're making them bigger again. Maybe you're giving them +2 attack on, pre-combat or even during combat, to kind of mess with your opponent's head a little bit. And it's limitless. Like, it's just based on how many resources you have. Like, not putting a capper on this kind of ability just really makes the power level of this card through the roof. He's uncommon, so there's going to be a lot of competition for him, right? Probably going to make it so there's not like 5 elf decks running around, but really, really sweet card. Really powerful. I can see this card being playable even if this is the only elf you have. His ability to make to give him an extra attack for 3 resources wouldn't really be that amazing. I've seen cards with similar effects. They didn't really have play, but the fact that he has Swift Strike tacked on is making that clause all the more worth it. Like, I mean, how do you deal with a 5/1 Swift Striker? Like, typically you have to kill it with some kind of removal. So if this card doesn't get dealt with, it's pretty intense. Now he's making your other elves bigger. A lot of flexibility, a lot of power level, a lot of synergy. I really like this card. So um, if there wasn't an elf theme throughout this set, which there is, I'd probably give this card a C+. But because elves is going to be a thing, I think it's really easy B-. And I might even go higher on him as time goes on. Actually get some more play with this card. Really excited. I think it's great. Moving on. Ashwood Maestro, a 3/1 for 2, single resource. Elf. Troop. Here's another elf. So this guy can be getting bigger. With the previous card. This one's a rare, so especially when you look at its effect and its rarity, makes me think this is really a constructed card. But his base stats of, for 2 costs getting a 3/1, that's definitely an aggressive kind of elf thing to do. Very Ruby thing to do, so I think that's totally fine. I like his base stats. Now, here's a card that I tried to build a deck around there in test server. Tried to build a ramp. Tried to go wild Ruby ramp, and didn't quite have enough of the wild cards, even though I opened up like 300 packs or something like that, whatever it was. I still didn't quite get all the pieces together, so I went mono Ruby ramp. So I played like some cards you'll see later as like my top end, and 4 of these guys, and 4 of some other cards you'll see soon, and thinking that, well, because my original thinking that this would be too much of an upside for my opponent to be worth it, but I wanted to try him out anyway, because if I was wrong, this card is great. It's just, you get to dump your hand before your opponent does, and attack with your big broken stuff that is built around this effect. And lo and behold, that was totally true. Especially if your opponent was like resource screwed, like needing a threshold or something. Like in mono, it was just like felt like you got an extra turn on your opponent. Like it was really incredible. I guess I'm gonna stop talking about this now because that's all constructed stuff, and that's not really why I'm here. But I still don't know how to. I still can't go too high on Ashwood Maestro because I built a deck around him for him to be good. I don't know if that's always possible. Actually, I know that that's most of the time not going to be possible in limited. So I have to give him a D+ and limited just because it's going to be about break even to maybe even better for your opponent if you can't build a deck around him, and that's just not going to be possible enough. But if you can build a deck around him, sure, he's great. He's like a B- because it's like getting extra turns, getting that much resources for free. But yeah, but moving on. So this is the other card I tried in that deck, played 4 of, and for good reason. You'll see why. Ashwood Soloist is a 1-cost single threshold troop elf ranger. When this attacks, gain a resource point. So this card's great. He's good at multiples. So I guess kind of like the ideal situation for this card is you play him on 1. He swings in on 2, you gain that extra resource, now you can play the 3-drop, and then maybe you have a 5 sitting in your hand, and so he swings on 3, even though he's probably going to get eaten or profitably blocked by your opponent. It's worth it because you get that extra resource. He gains you a total of 3 at that point, and like that's almost worth a card. So you've also done a little bit of damage, so you come ahead in the value. The value kind of exchange. Now, as a top deck late in the game, really not that good. So that's something to kind of think about more in limited. normally your constructed decks are powerful enough to stay productive even with bad top decks like this. So I do think this is a constructed playable card too, maybe. But yeah, it's good enough. Now the thing is in the archetypes that you really want this card, you're probably gonna want Elf Matters clauses. So if he is a late game top deck, hopefully the fact that he says Elf will carry you through. Otherwise, yeah, he's gonna take a big hit there. He's an early game all-star. So I mean, it's interesting. I like that this card says you have to attack to gain its benefit. It kind of keeps you in the mindset and the flavor of what Ruby tries to do, like what these maybe what these aggressive musical elves want to do. You know, they kind of want to David Bowie dance magic dance you to death with their flutes and their enchanted forest raves and all that. So yeah, I like this card a bit. Uh, I'm having a little difficulty reconciling how poorly it top decks late. But that's kind of the true of all rampers. I think what makes this guy worse is it doesn't say exhaust gain a resource, but I don't think that that would have been a good decision for kind of the flavor and the feel. So I prefer to have this as far as like a playability fun kind of thing. Uh, so anyway, I give this guy a C plus. I initially was like all in on him. I was just like B, play as many of these as you can get, and but limited games are limited and clunky and slow, and you do get into top deck wars, and what you draw on turn 5, 6, and 7 can often define the game. So anyway, hopefully you're aggressive enough to where it doesn't matter, but not always possible limited. So I have to kind of take into account all the different manifestations. Like I'm really smart enough to do that, but try my best to come up with all the different manifestations of how this card, and it performs great early, performs bad late. Overall, he says Elf. He only costs 1, and you gain some resources. Good enough for a C plus. Attack Dog is a 2-cost single threshold troop beast. When this attacks, it gets +2/+2. So this is kind of the analog, really a name and appearance only, to Guard Dog, who when you block, it gains +2/+2. Now, I've done about 70 set 1, set 2 drafts, and I have yet to see really anybody play a Guard Dog. And I think the reason is this, is that your opponent kind of gets to decide when it's good. So if your opponent doesn't have a profitable attack, he just doesn't attack. And Guard Dog just sits there as a 1/1, kind of hanging out with his threat of activation until he gets outclassed. Whereas Attack Dog, you get to decide when he's good. So a 3/3 on the attack end for 2 cost is pushed. A 1/1 for 2 is horrible. So this is going to go. Obviously, you're going to put this in your deck if you want to attack, and attack he will. He'll just attack until he needs to chump, or he can't get through anymore. He'll probably end up doing 3 to 6 points of damage on average. Totally did his job. Good puppy. Here's your bone, and then he'll go out in a blaze of glory as a chump blocker, and we'll all cry because he was a loyal dog is man's best friend. And but yeah, solid role player. I don't know if I'd want 4 of these just because it's not very flexible, but 1 or 2 on your 2 spot, I think it's fine. It keeps you attacking, keeps you aggressive. Give this card a C plus. Yeah, he's better than average. So better than average attacker. So C plus. Bomb Rat, 4 cost, double threshold. So that double threshold's a big deal. This is getting into your more dedicated Ruby strategies. Troop, Dwarf, Mage, Exhaust. This deals 1 damage to target champion or troop. I have had a hard time evaluating this guy because Um, that ability to do 1 damage to target champion or troop, to like ping something, is generally good. Um, but it's often irrelevant. And at around turn 4, when the earliest you could possibly play this guy, I would say average 5, maybe even 6 because he's double threshold, it may be completely irrelevant. So in the games where you're ahead and you already got a clock on your opponent, maybe this helps you get there faster. Maybe it like totally just nerfs any of your opponent's top decks because he's looking to trade up and he's got a 3/1 and he can't play it now because Bomb Right could kill it. Like in the best case scenario, it's pretty sweet. Or like when your opponent, you're on a stall board and your opponent's on 3 health, and this will just win you the game. That's always the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is it just doesn't have any targets, and you invested a whole turn in playing this guy, and he just kind of sits there, and your opponent's like, "All right, I see your plan, I respect it, but I'm gonna swing with my 4/5 and do a bunch of damage." And this guy isn't a good blocker. His little extra ping isn't going to help you win combat. He just kind of sits back, and you can have your 20 turn clock. I'll take my 3 turn clock. So now, I guess the analog in sets 1 and 2 was the aura or whatever that you'd pay double threshold, you'd cast it, put it on something. Whenever you put it on, could exhaust and do 1 damage to target champion or troop. That card again was good. It was good when it was good, and it was meh when it was meh. And that's not, I guess you could kind of say that about any card. That's not really saying anything. But what I mean by that is, it was good less often than it was meh. When it was good, it was really good. So when your opponent already had X1s out, like you're basically gaining card advantage, right? Because you're 0 for 1-ing your opponent. Like that's sweet. But oftentimes, it just did absolutely nothing other than set yourself up for a 2-for-1. Like I would normally end up killing it, kind of for the 2-for-1 and some of the inevitability. So whatever it was tapped onto, I would normally end up killing, probably for pretty cheap, like maybe like a burn or something, because normally someone put it on a bad troop that they didn't want to attack with. Bomb Right's just like bad. Bomb Right's a bad troop you don't want to attack with. I guess this kind of has a little bit of you're not going to get 2-for-1 playing Bomb Right because it's just 1 card. I don't know. I still don't like these effects. I think people are going to prove me wrong-ish, but I think it's not kind of the card where it's like after maybe 60 drafts, you've seen it in all its different iterations, and it's like, I don't know, he was good just as much as he was bad. So this doesn't strike me as an amazing card on any level. Try not to be seduced by its best case scenario, and just kind of say, yeah, this guy's fine. Probably more of a sideboard card. In all actuality, I know some of you guys are gonna scream when you hear that, and maybe I'm wrong. But after thinking about this, I haven't got a chance to play with him. I haven't got this chance to see him in action. It's hard for me to give him more than a C. So that's what I'm going to give him. I'm going to give him a C. And I know some other reviews put him a lot higher, and I'm with you on that. I want to believe. But his analog is, I would give it a C after seeing it plenty. And I know this is a different card, but that's kind of my basis for my evaluation. Is what a similar card did. Now it's obviously fallacious because it's a different environment. I get that, but I still need some reference point to evaluate this card. And there's not any new info that's going to make me really change my mind at this moment. Though this could easily change. So that's that. I give it a C. Sorry, I could be totally wrong in this, but that's my opinion, and I'm standing by it. Boonsmith, on the other hand, is a 4-cost single threshold. Big deal. troop, Dwarf Match. When this enemy plays, it deals 2 damage to target opposing troop. So, the 2/2 double threshold elf with the bow that did 2 to target opposing troop. Can't remember his name, but in sets 1 and 2 was pretty good. The only time I didn't play him was when I was trying to be, my power level was so high, or my curve. I would benefit from having such a low curve that the card wasn't quite enough of an effect, which sounds crazy because doing 2 damage tacked onto a card is always worth it. But I had like a lot of burn and similar effects, and I just wanted to keep my curve low. And I had trouble casting the double threshold, right? Kind of stuff like that. This card avoids a ton of that. Like, he could be a support. Ruby could be your support color. Oh, my puppy. So Ruby could be your support color. Also, he's an attacker too. Like, you know, he does his damage, and he can always swing in next turn, especially if you're holding a trick or whatever. But the flexibility of doing 2 damage to a target opposing troop is great. And I would pay 2 resources for that. I'd also pay 2 resources for a 2/1. And just an aggro deck. Getting both of those into one card is pretty amazing. Pretty efficient. It's way better than playing them both independently because it frees up slots to do other stuff. You know, not only play other cards, but it makes your resources spent all the more efficient. You know, that's part of the main secret to winning games, is just spending your resources more efficiently than your opponent. And this does 2 very powerful things in one card, or 2 very decent things in one card, and that just helps that whole war of attrition, resource war, slide in your favor. I think it's very excellent. I give this card a B, which is kind of a high grade for a common, but I think it's going to be kind of the ones that after a few drafts, like, these don't get passed anymore, you know, because we all just see the incremental value that this card provides. And, you know, the guy that got 4 of these just kind of won the draft with what seemed like kind of a mediocre deck. As these guys that were doing it. So yeah, I like this card a lot. B. Cerebus is a 5-cost double threshold 1/4 legendary with Crush and Rage 1. And if that wasn't enough, it deals triple damage. So this card's a super bomb. It's legendary. You're not going to see it a lot. Don't want to really go into it. This was my top end of my ramp deck. I guess he cost 5, so I didn't really need to ramp into him, but I just wanted to play with this card. It's probably the honest reason. So anyway, yeah, it wins games. Hard to deal with. Awesome card. Obviously, first pick bomb, put it in your deck. And limited. But other than that, it's got all its stats and costs is push because it's a legendary. So of course he's great. So I gotta have to give this card B+. Moving on. Shark, Hired Hand Elite. Another rare. It's 5-cost, single threshold, 6/6, rage 3. It's end of your turn. If you have any resource points. Random opposing champion gains control of Shark, Hired Hand Elite. So I haven't played this in limited. I did play it in my little ramp mono Ruby deck, and he was quite good. You just pretty much play around his claws. You just make sure that you can cast your resources. You normally only need to swing with him once. I know your opponent can chump block, but in the kind of decks that want him, you normally have a pretty imposing board presence when you play this guy. And also, I played some rare instant speed tricks that gave me like double strike and crush. So that's kind of where he shines. You need some support. He could lose you the game, but obviously you're not going to play him if he loses you the game. So it's really hard for your opponent to manipulate your resources. It is possible, but it's not common. So yeah, obviously the stats are pushed. This is going to be your finisher. The fact that he doesn't have crush makes him a little bit more of a difficult finisher. He's going to sit in your hand more often than you would like because you can't play out of line, especially if you get him really late. And it's like this guy top deck. You pretty much get one turn, he has to win you the game. Your opponent just needs a chump blocker to basically get him himself, unless you somehow get sinks. Like I built a deck around Shark being good, so I had a lot of good, efficient mana sinks and resource sinks and stuff, and awesome combat tricks to try to get his damage through. That being said, in limited, I would always pick him and try to make it work. I mean, a 6/6 for 5 with rage 3. It's 6 for 9. I would just build around him. Like I would probably need a lot of tricks to try to push through damage, and that's kind of the clause. You got to win with that turn. The next turn you attack with him, and obviously it's a pretty risky play because your opponent lives somehow, and you can't dump your resources. He gets them, but it's a powerful enough effect to shoot for, and I just think the way that most games play out, a 9 attacker, you're probably going to have other things attacking too. It's not the end of the world. I mean, it's not impossible to think of a scenario where this guy, it's going to win you the game. The line that you set up for him is going to work. So that's, it does have a pretty big setup cost. It's another card I had a little bit of trouble with because I want to like it and I want to play him. So anyway, I'm gonna give him the same grade I gave him when I originally did the set review 2 weeks ago, which is a C+. And this is even after playing with him because he does take quite a bit of setup. The setup is worth it. The risk reward is generally worth it because swinging for 9 is going to probably win you the game a lot. And if you have mana sinks or resource sinks and a board state and all that kind of stuff, just his value goes up. But he's going to be really bad sitting in your hand. That's sad. He's going to be bad when your opponent gets him. That's like a nightmare. So those are all like the limiting factors to him getting into the B+ range. I just think it's worth it enough. It's just, I think it'd be a mistake to look at this card and think that it's all too much of a drawback and you shouldn't play him. Like, there just aren't a whole lot of things. There's nothing in the game that swings for 9 on turn 6. Like, that's a huge effect. So it's really a matter of ensuring that can win you the game. Or you can dump your resources that turn, the next turn. So it's a little tough to do. It's a tall order, but it's worth it if you can do it. And it's just so pushed that it's gonna do something broken. And so as a cost of that, it's gonna have a pretty high setup cost. So I like it. It's rare. Probably talked way too much for a card that is not gonna be in your pick order that often. It's gonna be even an option to play. But he's that kind of card, It just gets the juices flowing and gets you thinking. And it's hard to evaluate, so that's another good thing, especially in a pre-release, and a spoiled card and all that. It's great fun. Deadeye Ripper is a 1/1 for 1 single threshold troop, necrotic grade, speed, basic 1-shot, pay 1, shift, speed. I hate this card. A lot of people really like this card. I think giving speed to something is not worth it. It's not worth a card. This card isn't worth a card on its own. It's a 1/1. Off! Sorry, that was my puppy. She's an asshole. No, she's cute. Yeah, I don't like this card at all. I don't like anything about it. I mean, speed is okay on like a big thing, like a shark or something like that, but I think people are going to play these. I saw people playing these in the test, and it was like, great. It's a very flashy, fun card because you just feel like you're going to build this race card deck, and it's just going to kill your opponent so quick. But it's a basic 1-shot. I mean, shift is good. This is definitely the worst shift card I've seen, but it's just because I'm so low on speed as being a good keyword. But yeah, shift gives you flexibility. But if a card just said get something shift, it wouldn't be worth it. If the card said 1/1 for 1, Necrotic Ranger, it wouldn't be worth it. If it said 1/1 for the speed, Necrotic Ranger, wouldn't be worth it. Shift speed, 1/1 for 1 Necrotic Ranger, which is this card. Put them together, still not worth it. I think people are going to try to build around this, and they're going to play 4-ofs, and they're going to get 4-ofs, because as time goes on, people are going to realize this card just doesn't do enough. I give it a D+, because it is playable. I mean, it's filler, I guess. You will win a game or two with its speed ability, but oftentimes you're going to need a card that actually does something, and this doesn't, and it's just going to feel like a brick. Too often than that. And yeah, moving on. Death Mask Assailant is a 2-cost single threshold 2/1 troop, necrotic rogue. Sweet, sweet vapor. This can't be blocked by troops with attack less than this troop's attack. So that's cool. A 2/1 for 2 is fine. It's common. So you're going to be playing this card in your deck anyway. And his, in his native home of first 2 turns, him attacking, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of 1/3s popping around. So, I don't know. I guess it's a bonus there, but you do need to develop your board and have presence. And what this guy really does is kind of just like come out. Maybe he does some damage, maybe he doesn't, but he kind of creates a board structure, right? You need 2 power things for 2 to kind of start during your development stages. So you play him out. Your opponent does his thing. Your 4 or 5 finisher type slot comes down the pipe, and you can start just doing damage because it's going to have, like, in Ruby, it's going to have a little more power than toughness, and your opponent's going to have a little more toughness than power, and it's going to start chipping away damage, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be aggressive, and really, the card already did its job being a 2/1 for 2. So throwing around that shift ability at will is pretty freaking powerful, and pretty powerful in Ruby. And he could even be good on his own. So I like this card a lot. I give it a B-. And that it's a card you're going to want in your Ruby decks quite a bit. It's a card that's scaled up quite well in your Ruby decks. It transitions from the early to the late game, or mid game, to even late game quite well. So he's going to be good at multiple stages in the game. And he's just kind of normal when you're behind. I mean, for his cost, it's a 2/1. It's 2/1 for 2. It's just fine, Maybe he could swing a race, maybe not. But it's just, there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of flexibility there. A lot of efficiency. It scales quite nicely. Yeah, B-. Duplicitous Duke is a 2/2 for 4, double threshold troop, necrotic warlord. At the start of your patrol phase, this gets must attack. Create a copy of this and put it into play, and it gets speed, and when combat ends, void this. Then, of course, you can give that ability to something else at basic speed for 1 cost. This card looks like you can do it all. It has quite a high setup cost in that in and of itself, it's just for 4 costs being able to attack with 2 2/2s is meh, because one of them die and the original probably just gets eaten on an open board. Best case scenario, that's pretty good. But anyway, I don't. And then there's like the dream clause of like you just keep casting bigger things, and this gets to keep making tokens, and you're swinging, and your opponent does his best to, he has to kind of chump, or eat something, and then it's still going to be more copies because you're shifting his shift ability on something that he can't profitably block, and then you're doing more damage while complicating blocks for your opponent, and you're just kind of you're going wide basically, and winning a race by just having more flexible attacks where your opponent has inflexible blocks. So yeah, that's cool. That requires troops, that requires resources being available, that requires your opponent really only having one blocker. I think more often than not, this card's going to come down and do nothing for 3 to 4 turns until you have something huge that is going to force an uncomfortable block by your opponent and force through some damage, and hopefully that wins you the game or creates enough of an edge to where you can win with another card or whatever. It's just he's going to die too easily on his own. So like if you tackle this with, if you make a clone of yourself, your opponent just eats this, and the clone does 2 damage, and then you're goodbye duplicitous dude. So that's a pretty high setup cost. I know all the, this is easy card to think of the best case scenario. Like you have a deck full of troops, and you're just you get an extra attacker return, and you're shifting this at the perfect time, and you're putting your opponent, you're doing like 9 points of damage, and you just got this win out of nowhere. I get it. I just think that it's going to be a little too clunky, a little too slow, a little too difficult to set up often enough. And it's a rare, so whatever. Again, we've talked way too much about it. So, but I give him a C+. Solid card. I mean, it's a powerful effect, and it's not the end of the world if he just sits there and waits for something better. It does make it kind of bad when you're behind. It's offensively minded. It's great when you're ahead. It could be good at parity, that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It performs well enough for me to give him a C+. Ember Tears. When this enters play, deal 3 damage to each opposing champion. At the start of your turn, deal 1 damage to each opposing champion. I think this card's great. The fact that it costs 5, it's kind of like normally your 5 slots in your aggressive Ruby decks you want to finish the game for you. So that could either be like a 4/5 with Crush, or a 4/5 with Speed, or maybe a 4/4 Flyer for 6, something like that. Something, or like a Fireball type effect. What's like Burn to the Ground could be, your kind of consider it a bare minimum costing 5 kind of finisher. So this card does that. It does 3 damage right away. That could win you the game. And then it puts your opponent on a clock. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think this card is great. Personally, I'd rather have these type of effects be. I would rather have the 4/5 with Crush than the Ember Tears. But I would play both in a deck if I needed to. I think this is a powerful effect. It's like I've seen similar cards in different TCGs, like do 5, and they were like they were fine as a top end and you're aggressive. I know Hex is a completely unique game, but there is a similar problem that pretty much all aggressive decks have, which is finishing the game. They're great at doing that first 12 to 15 points of damage, but then they don't really know. They kind of run out of gas, and then your opponent stabilizes. Yeah. So this is going to be that kind of card that gets you that last 5 points of damage. So for that, it's very good. It's not removal, so you kind of already got to be ahead for it to be good. So it's not always going to be worth a card. So for that reason, you're going to want it in your most aggressive decks. Otherwise, it just doesn't really do enough. Now, the new thing I've never seen on a card like this is at the start of your turn, deal 1 damage to each opposing champion. That's pretty sweet. That's legit. Even though there's not going to be a whole lot of stalls in your Ruby games because you're going to be attacking most of the time, those effects obviously go up in stalls. And if you've built your deck aggressively enough, or even mid-range, you've probably done a chunk of damage. This is going to increase to that clock, and I don't know. It's pretty good. So I'm gonna give this card a C plus. It may go down. It's gonna be one of those things you got to see it in relationship to everything else and how the power level, average power level of the decks. Well, my first impression is it's pretty sweet. Okay. Ember Leaf Duelist. These start really take forever. I gotta drink some tea and smoke my e-hookah. Alright. Ember Leaf Duelist. While it's attacking, it has Swift Strike. So I played a bunch of these in test server, and they're quite good. And for good reason. Again, we talked earlier about adding a Swift Strike to any base power and toughness is typically worth a resource. The fact that you get a 2-1 for 2, which is already passes the vanilla test, it's great. And then you added Swift Strike to it. It feels pushed to me, you know. Granted, it's when it's attacking, but it's kind of a big deal. But this is obviously going to go in your aggro deck. It's a perfect aggro card. It says Elf, so you can have some synergies with other Elf cards. I played a bunch of these, and they did exactly what you thought they would do. It just allowed you to keep attacking. And you want to keep attacking. Really good card. I think its importance is going to be undervalued. So I'm going to overvalue it to set to emphasize, because I empathize with the elves and what they're trying to do. The power level of this card, by giving it slightly higher than average grade, B minus, I think this card's going to be really useful at common. It's going to be like the lifeblood of your aggro Ruby decks, and really sweet card. I'd play 6 of these, whatever. I'm all in on Ember Leaf Duelist. Ember Leaf War Dancer, another common, 4/3 for 5, single threshold. Elf Warrior, crush, 1 shot. For 7, this gets +2/+2. Okay, so this is your finisher, and this is exactly what you want in a finisher, which is good news because it's common. It's because it's most often going to be your finisher. In aggro decks, you don't want a lot of 5s, but if you don't have 5s, you typically don't have ways to push through that last bit of damage, unless you have a bunch of removal or burn to the ground or whatever. So what you need is something that can push through the last form of damage. My favorite aggro deck in set 1 and 2 was Wild, and the finisher in that archetype was Rekosaurus. Here we have a card that's not quite as powerful as Rekosaurus, but it's in Ruby, so you have more access to more attack-oriented things earlier in the game. So this card is going to be, the fact that it's on a 5/3 for 4, Rekosaurus was so good. It's not that big of a hit. So I think she is going to be just fine, and as a 5-drop finisher, and you can dress her things. If she's not good enough when you play her, you got that 1-shot ability of giving it an extra +2/+2. If that's not good enough, you're probably in a matchup that you weren't supposed to win. You weren't supposed to win that game because it scales up. It's got the crush. It's got the 4 attack power. It's kind of the minimum. It's not guaranteed that it can be single blocked, profitably blocked, or traded up or down for, because of its toughness is pretty decent. I like this card a lot. I think you're going to see it as a finisher. I'm going to give this card a B minus for how important I think it's going to be in your Ruby aggro drafts. Remember, if you missed it, this is all about limited, okay? So I give special consideration for commons and uncommons because that's what we're basically going to be playing with all the time. So for that, I mean, the constructed world, yeah, B minus would be a horrible grade, but this is a limited set review. Okay. So anyway, I give it a B minus. I think it's going to be very important, and I guess I mean compared to the power level of all the other, I guess I have to give it a C plus. B minus is a little too. That extra point, extra bump is because of how important I think this card's going to be. But in a vacuum, yeah, C plus. It's what you need to finish the game, and it scales up a little bit. I like the card a lot. Fiery Indignation. 2-cost, single threshold, basic action. Probably kill something. Deals 2 damage to target troop. If you control a card with cost 5 or greater, deal an additional 3 damage to that troop. So, yeah. This is going to be good in your matchups. Well, one thing, this card's good. It's always going to find a home. You know that your 2 damage to target troop for 2 cost is a fine deal. And this is probably, yeah, it's like one of 3 available removal spells in Ruby, maybe more. I don't have the exact count off the top of my head, but so that's just fine, right? You need burn type effects. Burn got a little more expensive and a little worse because it's a basic action, and you can't go to face with it. But I think there's a general toning down of removal in the set, so this is a good thing. It allows more archetypes to develop and interesting game decisions and states and stuff. So anyway, so dealing 2 for 2 is just fine. And then now this clause of 5 or greater isn't always going to be that possible to pull off in its native Ruby. We just saw a fine card. So obviously, like, that card already can push through some damage, like the War Dancer. And then if you have the Fiery Indignation, yeah, it's going to do an extra 3. It's going to do 5 total if you need to just get rid of something that was preventing this from getting through. So those cards combo well, and pretty much anything that says 5 on it combos well. Fiery Indignation, like, that's a powerful effect. Getting an extra crackling bolt out of the deal is quite great. But so that's just like pure gravy though, because this dealing 2 for 2 is excellent, and so this card easily gets a B. I think the times that's all it does is deal 2 damage, you're gonna be happy, and the times that it does a total of 5 for 2 cost, I think you're gonna win a lot of those games. I mean, that's a huge effect. If you have a 5 cost thing, it's just a thing. It could be a constant. It could be whatever. It doesn't even have to be a troop. It's a big swing. That is a big swing for a low investment. You're probably going to be able to play something else that turn. You could even combo these. You could hold your 5. No, you wouldn't want to do that. Unless it had some effect that could win you the game by sandbagging it for 2 turns. I don't know. But anyway, this card's great. B, moving on. First Blood, create a Scrotus Raider and put them into play. Create 2 Scrotus Raiders and put them into play. These guys are cool. It's just kind of like, there's the champion that if you have more troops than your opponent, you get like a +1/+1, and Swift Strike. It's kind of built around that guy. And go wide strategies, which have been nerfed. You know, this would be a great War Master card. But he is. Rest in peace. Yeah, I like these guys a lot, and the right decks. You're gonna want to know. You're gonna know like what your champion you're drafting for, what your overall strategy is, and you're gonna know whether or not you want this card. And you're gonna see a ton of them because they're at common. Most people aren't gonna want them, so if you're the guy that can go wide and take advantage of just a bunch of little tokeny things. You can make your tokens bigger. You're going to get a ton of these cards, and your opponent's going to be like, man, what the heck? I didn't even think a weenie strategy was possible in Ruby, I just got owned. And you're gonna break this. You're gonna break this archetype because you played 4 first bloods when no one else wanted them, and you comboed it with some, diamond Anthony type. Give all your troops +2/+2 stuff, and you just won out of nowhere. Great feeling until that gets popular. I did do that in draft, and it was pretty freaking sweet. Felt pretty good. Played Diamond Blood, went Weenie Pump. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, so I went for the Weenie Pump, and it was basically, small dudes with tricks and a champion ability that could take advantage of me having more troops than my opponent, and it was test server, so I won every game that didn't break, basically. So anyway, and these were wheeling like mad, So anyway, that's my experience with this card. Nobody really wants it unless the guy that really, really wants it. The guy that really, really wants it is really, really happy. And so for that, I give it a C. No, actually, I should probably give it a D plus, just because most of the time you're not going to want this card. Scrotus Raider is a 1/1, so getting 2 1/1s for 3 is arguably fine, but really, unless you can take advantage of having more troops than your opponent or knowing wide, it's probably a little too underwhelming. So D plus. Flame Hand Invoker. 2. Symbol threshold. Troop. Product Mage. 2/1. Once per turn. Pay X. This gets X attack this turn. I like that a lot. Oh wait, there's more. Basic one shot. You can shift that onto something else. So this card's amazing. Okay, it's a 2/1 for 2. Great. When you're ahead, you can sink a bunch of resources into this. It does a bunch of damage. When you're behind, you can sink a bunch of resources into this. It trades up. When you're at parity, you can shift that ability into something that has a break even to profitable attack and make it all the more profitable and drive your opponent crazy. And in development stage, he's fine because he's just a 2/1 for 2 with flexibility. I think this card's amazing. I think it's a great ability, very Ruby. I give this card a B, easy B. That flexibility is super huge. That flexibility just on him or her, whatever it is, in and of itself, to pump up its attack is a great limited ability. And then have the flexibility to put that on something you choose. It's just so great, so great. I would go higher on this card, but it's an uncommon. I have to kind of keep a little bit of a ceiling on these guys. But it feels like a rare uncommon to me for sure. Really like this card a lot. I would first pick it. Yeah, I would first pick it. Moving on. Flaring Passions. Gain control of target opposing troop. Ready it, and it gets speed. And at the end of your turn, the random opposing champion gains control of this. That's gonna be really funny if we get like 4-person games, because like I stole your thing. Now your buddy gets it. Now your buddy gets it. It's kind of just like passing around, pimping off your troop. It's getting used and abused. And head to head, it's the kind of card that's mainly used to displace blockers. So like, you want to save it. Best case scenario is like when you can get rid of a blocker and the thing that you stole pushes through lethal damage. So I like to sideboard these cards in against like when I'm like super aggro and like wild. Against like wild, he's like gonna be slower than me maybe, but is gonna play something that just outclasses all my stuff and make it difficult for me to get the last 5 points of damage in. So this is kind of like a finisher in those decks. So it'll grab their big thing, and then I can swing for lethal. And that thing that I grabbed is like doing 5 or 6 points of damage, and feel really good about myself. It's fine to main deck cards like these if you're very aggressive. I prefer to keep them in the sideboard though. It's just maybe my personal opinion. It's not always relevant. So it's kind of a bummer having this just sit in your hand, hoping for the right opportunity to present itself. So for that, I give it a C, but I like the card a lot. Off! Oh, my puppy. Okay, Fury Seeker is a 4/4 Rage 1 speed, 6 double threshold. So this guy could be your finisher too. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the most efficient finisher. His Rage Clause is fine, though it's pretty expensive. The speed's pretty good, so we'll kind of like just get your opponent, in a race situation. It could swing the race. Swinging for 5 or 6 with speed is pretty good. And then your opponent's probably going to be disincentivized to swing back, because then at that point it's swinging back for 6. So if like in a dual race situation, it's a little having 4 power at 6 makes him a little tough at parity. It's a little underwhelming. I'd rather just have a 6/6 for 6 at that point. If I was in a parity situation, when you're behind, it's not the best blocker for the cost. And speed is not a when you're behind ability. It's like a win more clause or win a race a little faster than your opponent kind of deal. So for all those reasons, I give it a D+. But I would much rather have the War Dancer as a finisher and have to play Fury Seeker. And the fact that they're both common, you'll probably get to choose if Ruby's open. And this is double threshold. Ugh, I don't like this guy anymore. Highlands Black Belt, 2 cost 2/1. Rare. Human Warrior. So, for 2, you get to choose one. Sting of the Manticore, Wings of the Phoenix, and Breath of the Dragon. So, like, one's like, give this flight. Another's like, give this a counter. And another one's like, do its attack damage to something else. So all these are great. You get like a little card, like an effect card, and you put it into your hand. I played a bunch of these during test in a constructed deck. The takeaway of this card is it's a whole lot of flexibility and power built into a 2-drop. So I think there's just so much value in here. It's going to be hard to imagine not playing 4 of these in any constructed deck that can play them. It's just really that good. It doesn't win you the game on its own. It doesn't. Your opponent doesn't just see it and be like, "Oh, good game. Oh my god, nice top deck, bro." Because it's a 2-drop, but it does something that 2-drops shouldn't be able to do, which is all that extra stuff. I mean, I guess they could, but well, they are because this card is spread. But I've never seen a card really do so much for 2, at least in a while. And I really like it a lot. I think it's amazing. First pick it. It's gonna be worth something. It's gonna be the best 2-drop in anybody's deck that I can think of right now. And go team black belt. All right. Lunge. Target troop gets +2 attack and Swift Strike this turn. Quick action. So quick action is really important. The fact that it only costs 2 is really important. The fact that we already know that +3 in Swift Strike is pretty good on a card. The reason why Adrenaline Rush was kind of frustrating to have sometimes that it costs 3. It wasn't always convenient or possible to keep up 3 resources. The fact that this is 1 less and does arguably the same thing. Like typically +2 Swift Strike is going to win you all those combats most of those combat situations anyway. So I really like the card a lot. I think it's it's fine. Fine to at least play one of these in any Ruby deck. Some decks are going to want more, especially if you're like hyper aggro. Like if curve is just super, super low. I like this card a lot. C+. Canonized Mechanized, Demolisher, Troop, Dwarf Robot. When this enters play, create 2 demolitions and put them into your hand. Not sure what demolitions are. I think they're just like probably little dudes. But the fact that there's a 6/4 double threshold for 7, even if they were just 2 1/1s, not worth it to me. Really want to stay away from 7 drops in limited, especially in Ruby, unless you it says like I win the game, and this doesn't quite do that for me. C-, moving on. Mind Pyre. When an opposing champion draws a card, deal 1 damage to that champion. Probably more of a constructed card. It's rare, so you're not going to be able to see it a whole lot. That's a fine effect. A little bit too slow of a cock for its double threshold 3 cost. Not really doing anything when it hits the board kind of effect for limited, but I'm sure it has a home in constructed. I give it like a D+. Playing with Flyer. When you play a card with cost 5 or greater, deal 2 damage to that champion or troop. So that's really great. The fact that if this was tacked onto a troop, I'd love this card. The fact that it's just a constant, doesn't do anything, like sets up another card maybe being good, means that it's not really worth a card. There's not a ton of 5s you're going to want to be playing in your Ruby deck. It's kind of like a build around uncommon. I'm sure there's a reason why R&D prints those, but yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. D-. Pyronite, 3/2 for 4, single threshold. When this enters play, troops you control get +1 attack this turn. So I was wondering if I would like to play 4 of these in a deck, and I think I would. And here's the reason, is that how it scales is pretty sweet. So like, you're going to have a lot of good 2s and 3s in Ruby, and then there's a chance that maybe your opponent plays something kind of outclasses those. Well, this is going to help push through maybe a little bit more damage at +1. And then if it doesn't, then you're developing your board in a way that you're going wide with more attackers that are decent. So like 3 power for 4 is pretty good. And more often than not, that extra damage is going to do something, mean something on the board state. So, especially because there's like Swift Strike floating around in Ruby and all that. So I think this guy's really good. I think he's going to be kind of like your stock. Keep attacking, keep the Ruby party going. We're going to keep dancing in the forest with our flutes and our David Bowie outfits. And, he brought the fire. And, yeah, never-ending summer in the forest of the Ruby party, whatever. I like this card a lot. I think he's great. I would play 4 of them. It's not amazing on its own. We've got cards at board state to be alright, but oh my god. Ugh. So this card is great. Okay, when enemies play troops, I thought it was target troop. Yeah, no, this card's great. Holy crap. So I gave him a B- now. Yes, I give him a B-. If you don't have other troops, I guess he goes down. It's okay, I have to give him a C+. Damn it, this card's hard. Anyway, I'm going to play 4 of these. No problem. Alright, moving on. Cross range Tusker, no 1 for 1, single threshold, rage 1. When this attacks, another target attacking troop gets attack equal to this troop's attack this turn. I think someone's going to make like some kind of busted out of this and some hyper aggressive aggro shell. The problem with this card is that unless you play him on 1, he's just swinging with 1 attack. So even if he's enabling something else to get through, maybe, or do or make a better trade for you, or offer a better trade, it's probably just going to get eaten and dismissed. And it's going to feel like a waste of a card. So I don't like these things unless you can build a deck around ensuring that he can get to a few attacks in or whatever. But that's just too hard to do in limited. You don't really want to waste your removal just to make this guy a 1/2. It seems not worth it to me. I give this card a D+. Quetzal, Gorecaster. It's D+ in limited, okay, before you freak out. I think it could be okay in constructed. Quetzal, Gorecaster, 4/6 for 7. Double threshold, flight. When a champion is dealt non-combat damage, create a Scrotus Raider. for each damage dealt and put into play. So Scrotus Raiders are the 1/1s. So 4/6 for flight. I guess would be worth 7. Technically speaking, it's worth 7. I mean, it's going to be really tough to deal with. So this is like a 7-drop that has a pretty good chance of surviving, you know? To get to a point where it can win the game. It doesn't necessarily win you a game. And I don't know if you're going to necessarily be sandbagging your non-removal spells or your face damage to get Scrotus Raiders, but maybe. Now, it does play well with some of the constants that ping and do stuff like that. And some of the cards we saw earlier that can exhaust and do 1 damage. So this card, like, if she's not good enough to win the game, for some reason they can block a 4/6 flyer, you got like indirect ways of winning the game. And you're getting Scrotus Raiders. And yeah, it's fun. I could see like a little deck. I can already imagine a deck that this is like the finisher on. I think this is worth it in limited. But I don't think you're necessarily going to want to draft the cards that make its non-combat damage ability Scrotus Raider thing good. So you're really just kind of drafting this as a 4/6 for 7, which I could easily see sideboarding out the second game because it's just too slow and doesn't fit what your deck's trying to do. So for that reason, I have to give it like a C-. And the real reason for that is not that 4/6 for flyers are bad. 4/6 flyers are great. It's that paying 7 for anything that doesn't say I win the game next turn is bad. And it's bad because this is going to sit in your hand for 8, 9, 10 turns if you can even live that long, and you're going to would have needed rather just have anything you could have played. That would have helped you in your situation where it's just sat there and did nothing. So that's one reason to really avoid 7-drops. Moving on. Scrotus Raider, 1/1 for speed. I already talked about him. Scorch. Alright, people are already in love with this card. I'm having trouble seeing how it's worth a card. So the thing that happens whenever anything costs 0 is everybody gets so excited and it's like feels like it's plus EV and it's broken and like, oh my god, you could play this on top of it feels like a Mox or something in Magic where you just got like free mana. But the thing is that this actually costs a card. So in order for it to be worth a card, it has to do something relevant. And I don't really see 1 damage being all that relevant. So, this is limited. You only have so many slots in your deck. I mean, I could think of almost every other card I've reviewed up until this point would have a slot over just doing 1 damage. And the reason is there's just not a lot of X1s. Now, I could be getting my overall big picture wrong. It could be a ton of X1s that you want to kill. But there's typically not a lot of X1s, and I haven't seen a ton of them. Well, in Ruby there are, but 1 damage isn't all that great. Now, having a champion ability or a card that generates Scorches, that's sweet. But in and of itself, 1 Scorch, taking a deck slot, not that exciting. I think it's going to be sided out a lot. I think it's best started in your sideboard card and bringing it in. I'm not saying don't pick this card. I'm just saying don't fall in love with this card. Definitely don't pick it highly. I think it's a bit of a trap. It's also basic action. Moving on. Scraptooth Crackler, 4/1 for 3. These cards are tricky. They're really good at hyper-aggressive decks that can displace blockers. If you can consistently... It's obviously better on the play. Also, probably better coupled with like Sapphire, where you can like bounce stuff and exhaust things and all that. These cards are better than at first glance. It's because they do trade up quite a bit with that 4 attack. They're threatening. They just they do their damage when they can, and they just sit back and tell your opponents 4 and 5 drops that this is the trade you get if you choose to attack. And that's a pretty powerful effect. So for that, I give it a C. Moving on. Skewer, double threshold 3, deal 3 damage to target troop. Bam, sold. That's enough for a B right there. If it has toughness 1 or less, deal 3 damage to that troop's controller. So I like this card because sometimes you have to spend 3 damage on something that only has 1 toughness, and you feel kind of like you wasted your premium removal spell on it. So Skewer says, well, I'll give you a little bonus. Well, bam. How you like me now? You get to do something to your opponent's face. Don't feel bad, buddy. Hex loves you. Keep fighting the good fight. The flavor art's sweet. Orc gonna get down on some money. It's been skewered, sauteed, braised, and ready to devour. I like this card a lot. I think it's sweet. And obviously it's a B. That clause is fine. A little extra spice on the shin hair. I like it. So B. B, 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 B. All B's all the time. Score's great. Soul Battle. I played a bunch of these, and I played a 4 of in my little red mono ramp deck. They were incredible. They were the finisher I thought they'd be. Obviously, you're going to play it if you're in Ruby. Probably it's going to be worth 200 plat, because I think some decks are going to depend on this card. So anyway, this card's great. Deal double damage, and at the end of your turn, so it's crush and double damage. So crush gets the damage through. The double says, you know, we're going to multiply that damage that was pushed. This is great. The other thing that's not bad about it, it's not always going to necessarily win you combat, but it's more of a finisher. You don't want to put on something big, finish the game. I give this card, because it's a trick, I'm going to give it a C+. Its very nature requires a setup cost, but it's a very powerful trick, and that's why it's rare. I like the card a lot. Moving on. Staggering Blast, deal 1 damage to each opposing troop without flight. Sideboard card. Damage troop without flight, this can't block this turn. Sideboard card. 2 sideboard cards into 1 card equal main deck card? Pretty flexible. Your opponent's going to probably be more one or the other. And so that kind of makes the likelihood of this card being main deckable pretty decent. Normally you see these effects in isolation, so they always make the sideboard. I like that they put them in the 1, made it common. I like that. Thanks, R&D. Give this card a C-. Yeah. Alright. Sunsoul Phoenix, legendary 4/2, double threshold 6, troop, Phoenix, flight speed. Well, this is in your hand. This has cost. -2 for each action you played this turn. Constructed. Basic, while this is in your graveyard, void 6 actions from your graveyard. Play this for free. Constructed. Flight speed 4/2/6, double threshold. Okay. Limited. I don't know, play it, fine. It's going to be really hard to set all this up in a non-constructed deck, but more than happy to try. Probably have fun doing it. It's a legendary, so you probably get 1 shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Yo. Swordplay. Target troop gets +4 attack, 4. Single threshold basic action. I have yet to see this play. I think I had like 15 in my test server collection, just from drafting. Probably had 180 from all my pack opens, but this card would probably be mediocre even if it was a quick action. I mean, 4. It's a lot to pay for a trick. I know it's permanent and all that, but that makes it win more by nature, so like Ruby just doesn't have a whole lot of high toughness things. So this would be a really good combo with like Sapphire or Wild or something, or Diamond or Wild or something like that. In native Ruby, it's a little win more-y for me. Basic action makes it very easy to exploit by your opponent. And all in all, underwhelming. D. Tribal Warfare, target troop you control, and all other troops you control that share a trait with this get exhaust. This deals damage equal to its power to another target troop. So, I think this is more of a constructed kind of fringe deck card, mainly for the reason that it's going to be more difficult than it seems to set up troop synergies. That's just from a few drafts that I did. Like, it wasn't like you had an elf pick every turn or a coyote pick every turn, or whatever. That's just kind of like how most sets are. Like, it's varied and mixed, and it's got to have a little bit of something for everybody, you know. It's obviously the ceiling on this card is super high, though it also does require your base power and toughness to match up somewhat synergistically with your opponent's base power and toughness, and then also you need troop type synergies. And so that's two pretty huge setup costs. Yeah, I don't know. I can see this card in a stalled board doing, on average, maybe 2 for 1 on your opponent. When you're behind, it does. When you're ahead, it doesn't really do anything. When you're behind, I don't see it really. I see the situation being too kind of random, too varied, to really see this card being consistently reliable enough when you're behind. And then in development, it doesn't do anything in development. So I don't know. I don't really like this card that much. I think some people are going to do some amazing things. I think it's going to be like a fringe deck for a while. It's going to be in a fringe deck for a while. I'm probably definitely going to play it in tribal tournament. A guildie of mine's putting out. Murder. His name's not Murder. It's Torture. Sorry, get the two confused sometimes. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. But in a vacuum kind of average case scenario type evaluation, I have to give it a D. Twisted Taunter, 725, double threshold troop, goblin defensive. When this enters play, target opposing troop gets plus attack until the start of your next turn. So this is like the slowest, clunkiest removal ever. It's kind of like threat of activation removal. No, it's not, because it only does that once when it comes out. Sorry. So yeah, it's not a good blocker. I mean, it says 1 for 1 all over it, and then you get a little bit of selection of, if the troop's not a flyer, of what you get. You kind of get to pick what it 1 for 1 for. There's, I think, a card that lets you lose defensive and attack or switch stats around or something. But I could be wrong. But anyway, that's a really fringe combo. Whatever, man. If you really, really need removal, I guess Ruby doesn't necessarily have a way of dealing with giant wild stuff, so this is kind of a way of doing it. So sideboard card for that reason alone. Decent sideboard card. Other than that, C. Let me give it a D+. Vandalize, destroy target artifact for 1. Quick action. This is as good as it gets for Vandalize, unless they print a 0 Vandalize. In which case, then I would get excited about that card, because that'd be like super OP sideboard magic. Vandalize is great. Play it, like it, love it, eat it, exfoliate with it. Yeah, do whatever you gotta do. If you need to kill artifacts, it's perfect. Veteran Raider is kind of the after school special moment here with the Scrotus Raider. Telling them I used to do drugs too. Then I found the light. Or maybe there's some orc. Never mind. Okay, I was about to go to a dirty place. Moving on. Create a Scrotus Raider and put them into play. Basic 1 shot. 1 cost. Create. Yeah. Okay, so this is fine. It's a 3 cost 3/2, which is okay. Making a Scrotus Raider. On top of it for 1 resource investment. That's fine. So you're paying 4 total for 4 attack and 3 power. Pretty on 2 bodies. I think that's pretty break even. I like it. no big deal. Nothing really to complain about. I think it's uncommon, so you're not always going to get these, but when you do, you're kind of just like, cool, man. More stuff to block and attack with. Doesn't really fit an overall arcing strategy other than playing troops and attacking with them. So yeah, the card's fine. Let's see. Volley of arrows, deal 1 damage to target champion or troop for each troop you control. So this card is horrible, unless you can build the deck around it. And the deck you build around it is like you have all the Scrotus Raiders and Veteran Raiders, and you have the whole Raider Party, Raider Nation, and this card just does really broken things because it just does tons of damage. It's like Feed the Young Ones, except for worse because you aren't guaranteed to do 2 damage with it. But it's single threshold. But so anyway, this card I had played 3 of and I built a deck around it. I felt like I couldn't lose, but in most decks it's going to be bad to unplayable. It's just not going to do enough. So it's not very flexible. It needs a void state, all that kind of stuff. Makes me want to give this a C-, but it's going to be very good in the decks that can play it. Wolvia Balashir, 2 costing a threshold troop. Wolvia. This attacks, it gets +1 attack for each attack troop you control this turn. Again, you're noticing kind of the weenie strategy here. And then with the Scrotus Raiders and all that kind of stuff. So this card's going to be really good in that deck. On its own, a 1/3 for 2 is fine. Not much of an attacker, but I really like that he has 3 toughness, so you can kind of like endure. You want to make sure that he gets through a couple swings. At least does something with a big, bad, wide board state. Like him. It's cool. C+. Not always going to be... I mean, it's a little win more, but you're going to construct these decks in Ruby where, like, you're just thinking proactive, you know, and concentration of plays in turns 1. You're going to have a lot of 1s and 2s and 3 drops, and you know, maybe a couple 4s and 5s, but you're going to have these hyper aggressive decks, and that show pretty consistently because there's a lot of hyper aggressive commons. So this card does a pretty good job in that deck, so I think that deck's gonna be around more often than not. So good, solid C. Plus Yancey, Tinker of Terror. Yancey, Tinker of Terror is dealt damage to an opposing champion this turn. Pay 4, create a Murder Tron, put it into play. So see if we can find Murder Tron. Murdertron. Murdertron. Murder. I thought he was on artifacts. Murdertron. Murdertron is a 5 cost. 4/4. Rage. 2. Jesus. Crush. Oh my god. Swift Strike. So, let's see if I have flavor text. It just says murder, 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 murder. This guy has 1 goal. There's a hook for a hand, a sword for another hand, a rocket launcher, and a gauntlet gun on his shoulders. He's here to kill, and kill he will. Oh Yancey, what have you created? So this guy, luckily, doesn't have the easiest time getting through. Like it doesn't have like can only be blocked by or flight or whatever. But oh my bejeebus, if he does, Murdertron will win you the game. Great flavor card. I love the threat of activation on this guy. I love Yancey and his mad dreams of vengeance. I'd love to hear a backstory for him. Yeah, so create. I'm going to try to put it into play. That's really good. I guess you can do it you can do it multiple times in the game and just cry. Send tears directly uploaded to your opponent's face with multiple Murdertrons. Yeah, pretty powerful card, pretty powerful effect. Obviously, if you draft him, you're gonna want to find ways of getting him through. Not a ton in Ruby, but I'll probably find some help and some other support colors. Really good card. I give him a C plus. I give Murdertron an A. You know, can't necessarily give a dual evaluation in the one card because it's possible activation. I mean, a 2-3 for 3 would be like C. Murdertron Claws would give it a plus. All right, fine, give it a B minus. Metatron is that good. All right, moving on. So here's Whim, Sockable Major. Target troop transforms into a random troop with all the socketed powers of this. Random troop's scary because could be worse than when you started. So if you put it on like on a Scrotus Raider or something, it becomes like a 4/4 with an awesome socketed ability. That's great. If you, yeah, I guess you could use this as a trick. You could transform one of your opponent's troops. If it's really big, you may kind of be not so big. We got a little bit of flexibility there. The socket ability is going to be, that clause is going to be heavily dependent on what shard types you're in. Obviously, you put this on a Scrotus Raider and it becomes like a 5/5 unblockable. It's pretty sweet. But I don't really like random anything in my drafts, which is, I'm playing a TCG, so probably get used to it by now. But I try to make things as consistent as possible. This isn't quite the card that gets me excited to play in my deck, though. Depending on what I can socket, and as a top ender for a hyper aggressive weenie deck, it's probably going to upgrade something to make it pretty awesome. It goes down in value in a mid-rangey because you're just not going to want to take the risk on your mid-rangey stuff. Pretty cool card, though. Very interesting, rare, so you're not going to be thinking about it that much anyway in draft. I think that's it, man. I'm tired. Thanks for listening to my opinions, my rants, my hopes, my fears, my dreams. And we'll try to do Sapphire and Wild and Prismatic in the next 4 days. It's probably not going to happen. So this is Ruby. We'll probably get to Sapphire, and then we'll do Prismatic maybe release weekend or something. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and yeah, see you on the forums, and see you on charity stream. I'm not streaming, but it's just been awesome to watch and do giveaways and stuff. So it's a really great job this year. Everybody did. So we're so lucky to have such committed, awesome community people. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.